a sudden you got Hebrews that show up out of nowhere, enough of them for 300 different settlements that invade the land, and all these cities, including Jerusalem and others, are going, the Habiru are coming, the Habiru are coming. And let me just give you some excerpts from that. The war against me is severe. This is from Jerusalem's king. The war against me is severe. The Habiru have plundered all the lands of the king, just like you find in Joshua chapter 10. Another tablet warned the Pharaoh that all the lands of the king as far as Egypt will be joined to the Habiru. In other words, there's so many of them that just came out of nowhere. Yeah, they're conquering the entire region of the Promised Land, coming down from the border of Egypt through Jerusalem. They're up in Shechem, like they're all over the place. And so like the question that I want to ask, if these are the Hebrews, where'd they come from? Where were they before the conquest?
Well, let me go ahead and answer his if question. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. Because that man is drunk off his rocker. And he is so incredibly misleading in every aspect of this interview. That's why I've done like 4 or 5 videos based on this interview. So he's talking about the Habiru people, and he's trying to make the Habiru people fit into just a small category of the Exodus story into the conquest of Jerusalem, of the Israelite kingdom in and around the 10th and 11th, or 10th and 9th century BCE. Now, there's some major problems with his concept of trying to make the Habiru into the Hebrew or Israelite people. Now, on a simple search, which this is why I always say you got to Google competently and use critical thinking. On a simple search, yes, it would say that the etymology of the word Habiru could have been the name before the Israelite people, before they became Hebrew. But when you do a deeper dig into Habiru, you see that it actually, more than likely, started out as Aparu in the Akkadian language, which is a Semitic language. And then as it goes down into the other Semitic languages and into the Ugaritic, the Egyptian, and so on and so forth, it becomes the Habiru. But in almost every case, the Habiru meant a lower class social society of people. It meant the servants. It meant the people who hired themselves out as day laborers. It meant the slaves. It meant the mercenaries. It meant the thieves and the raiders. It did not mean any particular one social group. And that is a major difference between the word Hebrew and Habiru, because Habiru is not a one people. The people are of many languages. The people are from many different tribes. Kind of like how you had the Berbers, or, and I'm going to piss off some people on this one, the Moors. The Moors are multifaceted people. So the Habiru were people from many different cultures. They did not come out of Egypt. The Habiru had been mentioned and spoken of since the 18th century BCE all the way down to the 12th century BCE. So you have 6,000 years of this common term that's used to denote people who were a part of the outcast of society, people who were robbers, people who were vagrants, people who were raiders, people who were also brought in as military auxiliary forces. So this is in no way that the Habiru only represents the Israelite people. It is more than likely that the Habiru, the Aparu, that becomes the Habiru, represents a group of those people is represented within the Canaanites and some of the other smaller tribal people who developed themselves in and around the 14th and 13th century BCE. So as I've said before, the Hebrew people, the Israelites, come out of the Canaanites. So is it possible that some of the Habiru were people who become Israelites or Hebrew? Yes, most likely it was. But the total concept of the Habiru would be Canaanites and Pebusites and Jebusites and Ammonites and all these other ites. And it can be people from the Hittites, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, any marginalized people that can be drawn together for the common cause of robbery, raiding, slavery, day laborers, and any such thing. Now, the only thing in the Bible that would fit the Habiru people that you can connect would be the part of the story of Abraham when he brings up his band of nomads, and Habiru also nomadic people, brings up his band of nomads, and they go and they attack Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Well, attack Sodom to free Lot. That is like the only time, because that's the only time we see Abraham as some type of military force. There's no other story in the Bible that categorizes Abraham in such fashion. So therefore, Abraham could have been considered a Habiru or Aparu in that moment. But the term was a general term. And it's not uncommon for military forces to hire mercenaries, to hire auxiliaries in those days. It would be like how we have reserves. You know, we have the Marine Corps reserves. They would be the auxiliary. They would be the Habiru to the formalized Marine Corps, to a formalized unit. They become attached to that unit. And that's what they were. That's what the Habiru were. And with it being spoken from the 18th century, there was no such thing as a Hebrew in the 18th century. But could Hebrews have come out of that? Sure. Some of them, yes. But all of them, no. In Joshua 10, at that time frame of that writing, which it would have been in and around the 9th and 8th century BCE, you're talking about when 5 kings got together, because they saw that Joshua made a treaty with Gibeon, and the problem, and there's a whole other problem with that, because he wasn't supposed to make peace treaties with anybody according to Deuteronomy, but made treaty with Gibeon, and after destroying Ai, and now the king of Jerusalem is like, hey, these guys have gotten stronger. They conquered Jerusalem, they conquered Jericho, they conquered Ai, they've made treaty with one of my enemies. So since they've made treaty with one of my enemies, let me go make treaties with these other 4 kings, because these people are coming through conquering. Now that story is only valid for the Bible. And that doesn't make them the story true. Now the only historical true part is that once the Israelite people did become a kingdom, a people after the Bronze Age collapse, they did conquer those lands and establish their kingdom under Saul and David. Well, actually, we only have proof of David, under David and then Solomon. So there was a kingdom established, but they were calling themselves Israelites and Hebrews. They were not calling themselves Habiru. Habiru are the people that you bring on your side, or they're raiders, or they're something of that nature. So this man is just fallaciously going out here and misrepresenting the history and the archaeology to try to make it fit into the biblical narrative. And just because it has about a 5% fit doesn't make it true, doesn't make the Bible true, and doesn't make those writings true. So y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.